Well, here we are again. We're lighting the candle, a world that works. And I'm Bill Carell, and I'm here with, it's starting to seem cliche to me to say that you're two of my favorite people on the face of the planet. But let's try it this way. A couple of gals that are not so bad, okay? I absolutely enjoy our time together every single week, and it's all about keeping it fresh and enjoying ourselves and being empowered in the process. And each time we talk, I learn more about you. It's amazing to me the experience that both of you have. I'm kind of in awe of that a little bit. And at the same time, we have different kinds of experiences, don't we? But you two are bookworms. You've got credentials and all the rest of that. Now, me, I had 64 college credits, and I've never felt that that got in my way, having gone to college for that long. So it was. It's always been something that I've really enjoyed. But the neat part of it is that as we do in this conversation on a weekly basis, finding folks that are up to something in the world, that are interested in making the world a better place than when the sentence began. And to me, I think that's what life is all about, is to always and everywhere. And who was it that once said, if the next thing you're going to say doesn't make things a better place, then please don't disturb the silence. Don't spoil the silence, right? So that's something that today, before I introduce you to favorite not bad gals, um, today I want to talk about teamwork a little bit. I have some really great things that have been going on in terms of working with team partners in different domains. So it seemed to me like a good, appropriate place to bring it back up and have the conversation. So now I will introduce you. And the theme is team. And let's hear what you have to say on the subject. Or, as you know, you can break that chain and start a totally new thought. It's all good. So Lisa Sheehan and Jan Jeremias. Lisa, who I've known for it seems longer than 6 or 7 years, and Jan, who it seems like it's been much longer than just a year or so. And quite frankly, I've enjoyed all of that. And I'm going to take a breath here so that you two ladies can say what's on your mind regarding team or anything else that you want to share with our devoted listeners.
Team. Let's see. I'm curious what because of you working on different team projects, is that how you came up with the
Just
concept?
It just struck me. You want me to put a little bit of a frame around it?
Yeah.
So um, I've been working with a local charity, and I will name them because they're fantastic and they're really wonderful. And it's Holy Family Home and Shelter, and they have gone through tough times over, especially COVID, but probably over the last 20 or 25 years because they're one of our oldest social service agencies in town, and they're least understood by our community. That's what I'm going to say on the outset. So we have a new executive director, and when I had a meeting with one of our other community leaders in the spring, I actually sold him a piece of land that adjoined a property that he owned, and I said, "Well, I would like you to promise to do one more thing for me. Now that we're closing on this, I'd like you to be my partner in raising money for the Holy Family Home and Shelter." And so, mind you, this is end of April, beginning of May. And he said, "Funny you should mention that." He said, "We've been talking about doing that very thing, raising some funds with the Willimantic Rotary." And so that led into we're going to have a golf tournament. And that led into it's going to be in July, the middle of July. And then something happened and they had meetings and that got pushed to August. And then something happened and that got pushed to September. So I stepped in and did a few things, got some advertising going on the radio, put up a website for people to sign up, and kind of gave a little bit of a nudge, to the rest of the crew. So on day one, when Tim and I were talking about it, he said it'd be a nice touch if we could raise between 5 and 7,000, for the Holy Family Shelter. We met every single week all summer long. Each week something would happen, and then the next thing you know, we would, have a goal for the number of golfers, and now we're starting to get some sponsors signed up, and all of a sudden it looked like we're going to have 8,000 no problem at all, and then it was 10,000, then it was 12,000, and well, long story short, we ended up raising a total of $24,000 because everybody got on board. They all pitched in, they all invited folks, and we have such a giving, generous community. And we ended up originally the golf course owner was hoping for somewhere in the neighborhood of 60 golfers. We ended up with 100. First first annual tournament. So that's not what any one person could do, and they didn't have a whole lot of experience with doing this sort of thing, but they've got great team skills and have done many other things together, if you will. So they all brought what they could bring, and I brought what I could bring. I was not a member of Rotary, but I was representing the Holy Family Shelter during that period of time, and here we are. We're going to end up with $18,000 for the Holy Family Shelter dropping out of the sky, and 6,000 to go to other really important things in the community. So that'll put the frame on it. That's why I was sitting here kind of like basking in the glow of team. That's making a long story long.
Well, I know that's basically your whole life is dealing with different teams in different areas. I mean, charity and otherwise, business and networking, and it's all teams. So, I mean, you probably have the most experience and rewarding outcomes from and that and obviously the experience lends itself to being more rewarding too. I mean, right now we're doing, and I know you just went through this too. Our one of my little teams is putting together a high school reunion, and I mean, I'm not the leader of it, but I'm an active participant. And it's just funny to get together with people that you've known for that long, and seeing how each one takes a role without even being assigned one. It's just like their personalities, how they kind of plug themselves into the right spot, and it's always fun to see how that comes together and plays out. So I think team could be that. It should be fun, and it should be a role that fits each person to have the best outcome. At least that's the best way I've seen it.
And I'll tell you what, there is a very famous quote that I think works really well inside of a team. It doesn't work so well out in other areas, but it's from each according to their ability, to each according to their need. And I think that sentence is strong enough to stand on its own with regard to how do people who share a common end goal, how do they no, you can't get it wrong, you know? And I think these types of things, especially if you start off with folks that are accomplished, at our age, most of them are my age or a little bit older or just a little bit younger. And we had the same experience with the reunion. And a lot of times it just takes an agitator. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
My class refers to me as the instigator in chief because I'm always calling get-togethers. A couple times a year, and so we had the best turnout in 15 years that we've had for a class reunion. And I can take no credit for any of it other than I call a meeting.
Well, sometimes that's the hardest step to make. I mean, I've seen that happen before. Nobody wants to step up, and so nothing happens.
Well, that's not my problem.
Nope.
If you're up for something, then I'm your partner, and let's go get it done. That's the feeling. Jan, how about you?
And I'm thinking a little closer to home because I think that, we're parts of teams. If you think about your family, it's really a team of people.
Yes.
And I was thinking about it in regard to like, caring for older parents, that, you know, a team kind of people me and my brothers, and the different roles we take. And not to say that that's always been easeful, but I think you grow up and you realize people, at least I did, you realize people do what they can do at a particular time, but it is basically a team effort if you're lucky enough to have a team like that. So I was thinking about that. I was thinking about the fact that I'm part of a team of people with health and wellness as their goal, called the Healthy Neighborhoods Project, which is basically about spreading education and wellness amongst people all over, like different neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And so that is very much a team effort of people inviting people, and you know and trying to get people to, like, educating people and trying to get people to attend, and then trying to help people decide what they're going to do with that information. And that is because everybody knows somebody.
Yeah.
So that's also a team effort.
It's kind of neat. You go through a period, or at least I did, early on when I first started joining groups, where I noticed that people would get to the discussion of ideas. They were competing ideas, if you will, that nobody ever acted on anything. They never got to the point where they said, let's just do this, and I can bring this resource. And if you need this, I can do that. And then somebody else throws their hand up in the air and go, yeah, that's a great idea, that what you just said about what you can bring, and I can bring some stuff too. And then before you know it, it's easy for other people to get on the wave, and to surf in, and do things because they know other people are working hard as well. It's the most remarkable thing in the world to observe, when once other people take over an idea and make it their own, you couldn't stop them if you tried.
Hmm.
And sometimes it seemed like the hump was getting to a point where somebody fired the starting gun.
Right. Or just somebody got, like you said, got passionate about it, basically, so that they were willing to step up and do something.
Yes. Yeah, and I wonder how that plays out. I mean, everywhere in our life, 24/7, there's this opportunity to always find your spot as part of the forward positive energy, especially in family, Jan. I completely get what you're talking about right now. We've talked about this before, because I have a blind 88-year-old, absolutely wonderful dad who is struggling health wise at the moment, and winning up and down. Every day is different, and that's hard for people to process. It's very difficult for people to process, and things get done, and there's a first knee jerk reaction, to look for how it could have been done better. And one of the cool things that I like to bring to the conversation, if that ever comes up, is, no, you did something good for you. What now? Where do we go? What's the next thing? We don't need the hindsight. What we need right now is, that didn't work, or it did work, and as a result of that, what's next?
Yeah, I mean, I did that spent the past 3 weeks with my parents. So
Yeah.
I do a lot of that when I'm with them. Also, this idea of that, even if you're, let's say, it's a team effort to care for somebody, there's also the honoring of the fact that they, they do have their own lives.
Yes.
And and as much sometimes as I want to take over because I feel like it's very, because you want them to make better choices than they do.
Or
They
you make the choices, right?
Yeah, well, it's just some of them are health choices, some of them are safety choices, but it's also not my decision to make right now. And so, I have to step back, as hard as that is sometimes, and take a deep breath, and sometimes leave the room. I just say, okay, I need a little space.
Well, in my experience, I even wonder if they know they're making choices. They're just doing stuff, and some of
Mhm.
it good, and some of it maybe not so good.
I mean, yeah, some of it is that, and some of it is conscious choices. Like,
Kind of.
but so, but it's interesting to be in that kind of role and to be part of a team, and I think that in some ways, I know that in my family situation, it's brought us closer. Yeah, my brothers and I,
Yeah,
because we have something, and we love my parents, so that's the common bond.
yeah. It's interesting that we were talking about partnership probably a couple weeks ago, whenever it was. And one of the elements of partnership, which I don't know that we really got into all that much, but it's the same for team, where everybody's working together for something that's bigger than they are alone. You know, it's always something that's a larger, more important kind of a thing. Like being in charge of some other human being or some animal's care. It's a big deal. You don't always know the right thing to do. Sometimes you make a move, with trepidation and it works out or it doesn't work out. But the whole idea of being accountable and responsible for a bigger notion, like
Hmm.
doing the best that you can, a little bit at a time or big sweeping moves if that's what's called for.
Exactly. Yeah, sometimes, yeah, sometimes you don't make you make a choice and you're like, okay, that wasn't the right choice. But I
Right.
think we do that if we think about partnering with ourselves. I think if we talk about partnering or, a team as being, the different aspects or the different parts of yourself, then we do the same thing. We test out the water sometimes and then we're like, that wasn't a good idea. I used to say that when I used to, my yoga practice, when I do something and then I'd pay for it, with either extreme, like, I hurt myself or I'd something, and I'd be like, okay, I guess that wasn't a good idea. But you don't know till you try
Well, I
sometimes.
love that notion of partnering with yourself because there's always three of you there, right? Me, myself, and I.
Hmm.
And if you're smart, you've got each other's back.
That's right.
I was that voice inside your head, that team member there. I was listening to Michael Singer today for a second, and he wrote Untethered Soul, which is a book I adore. But and then I'm taking a philosophy class, and I know we've talked about like to stop the mental, like to hit pause, which sounds like an easy thing, yeah, but you never do it when you're in the throw of or in the middle of things. So the philosophy class had this kind of cool idea. It was like, so day is made up of desire, action, desire, action, desire, action. So that their idea was to rest while you're in the action. So it was kind of a cool way to settle your racing thoughts and say, okay, I'm in action now. Let me pause and actually like notice the senses and things that are around me and be live in the present moment kind of thing.
Hmm.
So to quiet that other team member that's not always giving you the best advice.
That's right. That's more the ego than
Yeah,
useful information.
right.
So it's very interesting from the standpoint of if you were to consider how many people show up to a group and have no association with the concept of team while they're there, and you can always tell when there's a group that's got 30 selves in it. For some strange reason, it can be draining. It almost always has tension and conflict. It almost always has winners and losers. And as a result of the competition and the conflict, certain people are inspired or actually damned by parts of the conversation, not even being a full participant in what's going on in a situation where people are vehemently disagreeing publicly. It's kind of like if you remember when you were very small, I mean, like maybe 16, and mom and dad disagreed with each other about something that you considered important, or maybe you didn't even understand what they disagreed about, but it's just not, it's disconcerting to be around people who are more committed to winning an argument than they are about producing some sort of an outcome or result.
On that's obviously opposing, yeah, factions in any team. Again, I could go back to my high school group, and because like most of everybody these days, there's such opposing sides, especially in your political beliefs and otherwise, that we know there's a danger that could happen because we have extremists on both sides. And we know that conversations could get out of that, it won't be supporting the team as the class, it will be supporting themselves in their own agendas, like you were just saying. So there's no pauses being taken sometimes.
And there are master manipulators who are really good at causing flash fires,
Mhm.
knowing that someone in the group is going to vehemently react to the right words strung together in the right cadence at the right volume. And how is that for everyone else?
Well, we're all under the rest of the team is under strict instructions to kind of like dissipate any and redirect.
Or don't get any on you.
Oh no, yeah. Run the other way.
Yeah, exactly. There's not a lot of risks going to be taken in that group after that goes on. What are you thinking, Jan?
No, I was just thinking that I find it. Uh, Sometimes I look at people who can diffuse situations like that with great ease,
Yes.
and I'm in awe of them. It's just this feeling of like they'll say, "Okay, well, now's not the time to discuss that," or whatever they say, and they have enough authority in their voice, and there's no anger. It's just like now is not the time to discuss that. We're like, let's get ourselves back to like the topic at hand or whatever it is. And they do it with such class and finesse that I'm like, yay, because they haven't mustered up the courage to necessarily do it. But I'm really envious of the people who have that ability.
Yeah. Yeah, there's kind of a fireman's mentality there. Who, when you know that it takes three elements, for ignition, you got to have fuel, you got to have heat, and you have to have oxygen. And when you start being able to tell the three things apart, then you become adept at removing one of the three. That's all you have to remove. You don't have to win the argument or stop it or shut somebody up. All you have to do is, agree with somebody sometimes and say yes. And if that happens, then what? What? People are
Or
not ready for that.
that's right. Or that's a really good point.
Yeah.
But right now we're going to, we're going to move back to our topic or whatever. So
Yeah, or something simple like, I think I understand what you're saying, but could you rephrase that just a little bit? Because I get your passion and everything, but I don't think I'm really fully hearing what you're saying.
I
And
have a funny feeling you've done it more than once, Bill.
probably will not consciously, right? It used to be a practice that was awkward for me. But you try leading groups of 200 and 300 people for going on 40 years. Every once in a while, you come across something that sort of seems to work, right? But what's really exciting for me, in the whole team idea is to see people get energized and just laugh and have a good time about the result that everybody produced. And it's not important, you know, that somebody did more than somebody else. It's really important to recognize everybody that played. Any type of effort, for the cause. That's part of that. Could be that one little thing that sparked the entire team to do really massive things.
We've actually, because I don't know if you've come up with this situation, I'd love to hear. Because we've had the situation in that same group about people getting upset with people that aren't doing what they feel that they aren't keeping up there, and or not even participating at all. They're part of the group. Why don't they show up anymore or something? And this time of life, there's a bazillion reasons, and most of them are not good. Why
Yeah.
people can't show up at this time of life. I was cracking up because before you used to say, okay, can't do the reunion because of graduation, you can't do it because of weddings, you can't do it, and every year, every 5 years, it was something different, and this year it happens to be procedures. everybody's having a procedure, or somebody's mother fell, or it's kind of been funny that way. So, but behind all that we know of, there's all these other circumstances that are stopping people, and it doesn't matter that they can't go. But I'm wondering what your or how you've dealt with situations where people are kind of almost rudely negating somebody's, or highlighting somebody's non-attendance.
It's an interesting thing. Um, about 35 years ago, thereabouts, I went to a large group meeting with over 300 people in it, and all of us were candidates to become leaders in a particular discipline. And all of us were type A's. Most of us were not very good listeners. Some were. I admired those people, but at the age that I was probably one of the poorest listeners ever. So there were always opportunities for people who were not present and other people to say, we're doing all the work around here.
Hmm.
But there's a thing that, a little story. I'm going to see if I can find it here and read it to you, if that's okay.
Yeah.
And we'll see if that helps maybe lay the table for what it's all about. I will make it a little bit bigger. So this is the goose story, and the source isn't known to me. So next fall, when you see geese heading south for the winter, flying in V formation, you might consider what science has discovered as to why they fly that way. Each bird flaps its wings and creates an uplift for the bird immediately following. By flying in V formation, the whole flock adds at least 71% greater flying range than if each bird flew on its own. People who share a common direction and sense of community can get where they are going more quickly and easily because they are traveling on the thrust of one another. When a goose falls out of formation, I'm going to back up for a second. When the head goose gets tired, it rotates back into the wing and another goose flies point. It is sensible to take turns doing demanding jobs with people or with geese flying south. Geese honk from behind to encourage those up front to keep up their speed. What do we say when we honk from behind? So now I'm going to talk about when a goose falls out of formation. It suddenly feels the drag and resistance of trying to go it alone and quickly gets back into formation to take advantage of the lifting power of the bird in front. If we have as much sense of it as of a goose, we will stay in formation with those who are headed the same way as we are. And finally, this is important. In 40 years, I have not been able to get through this. And I'm going to do it now. When a goose is sick or is wounded by gunshots, maybe I won't, it falls out of formation. Two other geese fall out with that goose and follow it down to lend help and protection. They stay with the fallen goose until it's able to fly or until it passes. And only then do they launch out on their own with another formation or to catch up with their group. If we have the sense of a goose, we will stand by each other like that. And that is the goose story. And it always tears my heart out. And I'm willing for it too because I care that much about people.
I just talked about that with my parents last week, actually. That same exact, because I haven't read that one exactly, but I've read that a number of times. And I also love the idea of when one falls out, there's always two that drop to the ground with it.
The caregivers, healers, yes.
Yeah, it's never alone,
No.
which
Mhm.
I think is just so profound. Like it's always, it has beings like it with it, and it's just beautiful.
So one of the things that I'm represencing every time I read that is somebody who's been on one of my teams who's no longer with us. And like I said, it was brilliant to organize that group of 300 people to forget the squabbles and the small stuff and the competitions. It's really sensible for people
Did
to
you
take.
read them this story?
They read this story at the group, and I
Yeah.
stole, and I've been repeating it to groups ever since.
Can you send it to me too? Is
I'm
it in
happy
French?
with that. And you at home, all you have to do is get in contact with me too. You're
Mhm.
probably not going to cry, but you know what? I'm just going to drink water and replenish my fluids here, and I think I'll be okay.
Of course you will.
So in the meantime, um, so what do we
Well,
do when people are talking about folks that are not present? You can always say, look, there's plenty of time for you to go encourage that person the next time you see them. But guess what? When you're not here, we waste no time talking about what you're not doing. Got too much important stuff to do.
and I always take it on the positive is that I have no idea what's kept that person away.
Hopefully, it's nothing bad.
Yeah.
And so especially these days, I really try not to judge. So I'm, you know, very much as try to really adhere to that these days.
Yeah.
Because I've had situations where, in the past where I'd gotten upset or something, and then you realize that somebody had a really, tragic
Mhm.
thing happened or something. And
Right.
here I was complaining, whatever, or somebody was complaining. And I'm just like, so I feel like it's not my place to judge anybody.
Yeah, and above and beyond that, you also want to take care of the person who's kind of like losing their leadership for a moment.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. One of the things I looked up, I was curious. So I looked up team. And if you look up in history, they're talking about teams of animals and
100%.
animals being yoked together. And
Oh.
I could have that definitely have that, like, a team of oxen, you know, that kind of thing. And the interesting thing is that a team of oxen has to pull together. Like you can't have one be stronger than the other,
Yeah.
because then it's almost cruel. It's considered like animal cruelty because you're forcing an animal to go at a speed that it's not able to do.
Right.
And obviously, if we're using it for plowing or whatever, it wouldn't be even, or whatever was trying to happen, whatever you were trying to accomplish couldn't be accomplished. So I thought, well, not often that I really think about that when I'm thinking of working as a team. And so I just wanted to share that.
And immediately that calls to mind, the notion that the bigger the team, the stronger, and the more efficient and the more effective. Like 20 mule team borax. That's gonna get your clothes clean, right?
Mhm.
20 mules, man, that's a lot of mules. But the really interesting part about that, when I pulled that up, I probably haven't read that in a group of people for 10 or 12 years. Um, and I usually was smart enough to let someone else read it who'd never read it before, and it still got me. But I read that at company meetings. I read it at annual dinners. I read it in most of the not for profits that I volunteered. In many cases, was committee chair or president or something of that nature. And it really set the tone for people. I did not read it to the Rotarians because these guys from my community, I think we'd all be sitting around bawling because all of us have lost a lot of team members over the years. But you know what? when you think about what the two emotions, happiness and sadness, and I'm not sure how I would label that experience of what happens to me when I read it.
Mm.
I used to think it was not a good thing. And I will tell you right now, I don't care. Every moment is an opportunity um, to express yourself as authentically as you possibly can.
Hmm.
And if that's what comes up for me, it's a little bit like, when I speak to large groups of people, the butterflies. I know you both know what I'm talking about. Anybody who's worth their salt gets up for the game and they never deliver a pat by rote, memorized talk to people. That makes no difference in the world, right? Going through and giving people scripts and playing B7 from the jukebox, over and over again, and then you get the same reactions and the laughs but it makes no difference. Afterwards, it's like they ate cotton candy for a while. Very entertaining for the moment and didn't change the world. Be, be willing to be the team member that's willing to look good and look bad and change the world.
And your reaction is basically, when you think about it, based on past happiness. So
Yeah.
now you're sad, so it's like, grief is the price of love. If you didn't love, you wouldn't grieve. So if you wouldn't cry if it didn't evoke emotion that had some heartfelt base to it.
Yeah, and sometimes they say there's a fine line between pleasure and pain. I think it's the same for happiness and sadness.
Hmm.
That sometimes it doesn't have a name. It's just a very young expression for something that I'll speak for me, that I haven't, gotten the language, to be able to say it without it being, having an emotional attachment, or without it having some sort of a triggering reaction, if you will. Because you can, the trigger is okay, and then the next thing that happens is almost always some kind of action, and then what happens afterwards is the consequence. I would say while you're having the action or the reaction, damn the consequence. Just
Definitely.
get everything you can out of your life.
And
My
I tell
friend
you, go ahead.
Yeah, my friend posted this today. It was in response to somebody, and he wrote this. He said, "Total." He was talking about like live your life, like truly live your life. And he said, "And if your friends don't think you're crazy, you're not pushing the limits of your potential."
Yeah.
Right.
And I loved that. I thought, okay, that says it all. Like, basically, you know, if you're just doing the status quo and the same thing every day, then
Absolutely.
then
You
just
know
doesn't.
what? There's another interpretation. Forgive me for jumping in, Jan, but there's an interpretation of namaste, which basically says, you know, uh, I honor the weirdo in me honors the weirdo in you.
Oh, absolutely. And
Go-
I just love that idea of, I think that that's totally true. Like
Yeah,
the people who know you best, like don't think you're a little off because it means that you've gotten too complacent.
yeah. There's one.
Mhm.
There's a meme on Facebook which says, whenever I get into a bad way, and it's got this squirrel with long ears, and it says, I just go into interpretive dance.
I've seen that. I love that. The interpretive dance.
It's
So I
funny.
thought I'd share another reaction from a team that, like, one of those teams that you forget that you're part of. Like, I own a Jeep Wrangler, so
Yes, you do.
that's a team right there,
Yeah.
so, and we wave to each other, and I was at the Big East Sunday, and I got back to my Jeep, and there was a little rubber ducky on the handle of my car, and I was ducked. There was a little thing on attached to it to tell me that I was ducked, and that I've owned my Jeep for 13 years, and I never knew that that was a thing for Jeep owners to do to each other. And so I was I mean, the expression, my niece was with me. I said, "Look, Morgan, I got ducked." It was like such.
Did you have
But
to go and Google what it meant?
Oh no, yeah, yeah. It's just a thing that the regular people do with each other randomly, just to
Just a
say,
little
"Hey."
act of kindness. Yeah. Nothing better than that, right? It's kind of like a poke on Facebook. Most people do not understand the power of the Facebook poke.
Yep.
I mean, for over 15 years, that's how I've been in contact with people from other countries whose language I do not share. It's it's an amazing thing. And when you and I get the opportunity to just acknowledge another person is out there, and I'm thinking about you right now, and I'm sending you, Jan, this moment, a poke which basically says, I know you're out there, and I hope it's going well for you. Just for a moment, you see that you got poked and you go, oh, I'm thinking about that person.
Hmm.
Kind of a cool thing. Those of us in the poke community absolutely love that opportunity to
Right.
reach out and touch someone every single day. And it actually keeps score of how many times you poke somebody and how many times you've been poked by that person.
That's part of what the reunion thing is like too, because you constantly reaching out to someone that you haven't in a while, and everybody's kind of getting together and figure out who they can try to contact and convince to come. I mean, it was fun. I got a couple that are definitely coming, and a couple that I can't do it.
So this is when you have that conversation with them. And when you can tag team, we actually had folks that we decided that we hadn't seen in 15 years, or 20 years. One gal we haven't seen since the 5th year reunion, but we did all of this back and forth on Facebook. And oh my God, yes, you've got to come.
Hmm.
We're at an age right now where it doesn't matter what's working in your life or not working. We're as close to family as it gets. We spent the better part of 18 years of our lives, together in one fashion or another.
I had an experience where for many years, I went on a yoga retreat every year to Mexico.
Yep.
And I did it for about more than 10 years. And then I missed a few. And I had a friend and she said, well, you're going to go this year? And I said, no, I don't really think I'm going to go. And I said, and then all of a sudden, like out of the blue, I got a message from my friend in British Columbia who said, are you going this year? Because we're going. We really want you to go. Like a day later, I got a letter from another friend asking me, like a written letter, asking me the same thing. And then someone else. And then I had a friend who I used to room with who said, you really got to go. And I said, okay, everybody's telling me I've got to go. I think I better go. Like I think there's a reason I'm supposed to be there. And so I ended up going, but it was kind of like all these people out of like different, like almost that aren't connected to each other,
Yeah.
all of a sudden reached out at the same time. And I was like, okay, I get the message.
That's fantastic. And however it works, it's perfect, you know? And the ones that are not there, I mean, we had the opportunity to have that conversation
Right.
at our 50th high school reunion. And you know what I said when somebody said, oh, I wish so and so were here? I said, I really do too. And somebody would say something like, well, what's wrong with so and so? They never come. And I go, well, maybe next time, you know? And what made you come this time?
Mm.
Just ask a question. But you know what? It's always perfect. Whoever shows up. I mean, that's the world that I live in.
Oh yeah.
I don't care who the group is. I just want to play with my friends. And they're all my friends. A lot of them I just haven't met yet.
There you go.
Mhm.
So in terms of maybe side trails off of team, can you think of anything that so Jan, did I understand you to say that you went to it was a Yale trip?
No, a yoga
Yoga.
trip, a yoga trip.
Yoga trip. Okay. You said yoga, I heard Yale.
Yeah, no, I went on a yoga retreat every year for
Fair
like
enough.
11 years. I haven't been well, since COVID, I haven't gone, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I did have a point to make, which isn't relevant any longer, but But yoga is a form of Yale, I would say, and Yale's a form of yoga, So I think the really neat thing about it is you get to opt in to any group of geese that you want to.
Mhm.
And they're all flying in different formations and different directions at the time you're flying with them. And you can pick and choose what part of the V you actually want to occupy. And there are some times where it's just as important to be that last goose out on the right hand side, all the way in the back, as it is to be the one at the front. As you keep rotating forward and you keep rotating forward, your time to be the leader, comes from your time being at the back of the pack.
From what I read, though, there are only certain ones, only certain geese are leaders.
Really?
Yeah, not everyone takes on that role when they're actually flying in formation. I mean, that's what I've read. I'm not sure. I could be wrong, but
Well,
I
you know what? It stands a logic test. Basically, animal kingdom. That's true in most groups, isn't it?
Mm.
right, exactly. What I was thinking about is you can take a different V formation with different groups,
Yeah,
but depending on who you are, like I look at the groups that I'm in, and they're really all trying to get me to the same place.
Oh.
and that's another one of Bill's corollaries. Work flows to the competent individual in the organization.
Yeah, but they're all trying to get, like, they all have the same objective. They all have the same, you know, what I want out of it. And so they may be different groups of geese, but really they're all the same.
That's a very empowering interpretation. I love it, as a matter of fact. If you start with that premise, holy mackerel, you're close to the end already, aren't you?
Mhm. I mean, I think you just have to look at
Yeah.
what your purpose is, or what you're, whatever I like to call purpose. I don't like the word desire, because that seems, I don't know, purpose seems more meaningful to me. And so, they're all with the same purpose in mind.
Yeah. Uh, Goes back to the early days with management by objective. And
Hmm.
having an end in mind really made the daily routine a lot easier to regiment and a lot easier to say, I have time for this and I'll make time for this that you want me to make time for tomorrow.
Hmm.
It's interesting. So, how many teams would you say you're a member of right at the moment, Jan? I'm curious.
Like five, I think.
5 with different purposes, it sounds like, or different.
Actually, five different groups, probably all similar purpose. You know, all about health and wellness, or betterment, or growth, but possibly different groups of people.
It's interesting. I really love what you said about leaders and a good group and team is able to share leadership. And I think it's the nature of good leaders that know that their job is not to lead, but to create great leaders.
Hmm.
In that context, that's where the original statement of leading from behind came from. It never had to do with being out of the picture and hoping other people do the right thing. It's always had to do with being completely intentional, completely committed to someone else's leadership, and being willing to put in what's missing at the time that it's missing and step back out again.
Hmm.
Interesting. And how about you, Miss Lisa? How many teams would you say you're on at the moment?
I would say probably 4 that, stand out, and they're all different. I mean, completely different. That, when I think about them. because I've got, and some, you probably don't even think about the groups that you belong to, church group, and we're a small, tiny little group right now, and we kind of need all of us to, and we all take turns to present each Sunday and stuff like that. So, that's but I mean, I think if you break it down, the goal of most groups is, to have the betterment of the group as a whole, and not as an individual process. So the only way it works.
Yes.
And
And
how
then
about you, Bill?
how many?
Yeah.
Underneath all of it, just one
Not
team.
fair. Not fair.
Well, all right. So let me put it to you this way. I have long since given up the notion of there being different teams, which to many of my friends' detriment, because in a half a dozen networking groups, I have the same people showing up. Why? Because I invited them. And the fun part of it is that I just like to invite people to hang out, on the things that I find important, if they find it important too. And then before you know it, we're just kind of like going around, from these networking groups, business and chambers, and you name it. And many of them turn out to be board members and leaders and all that sort of thing. And so the thoughtful answer for me is I'm on as many different teams as I'm awakened up to recognize that there is a team, because it's not always self-evident.
Well, I was going to say, did you think of us as a team?
100%.
Yeah. So
No,
that,
we're joined at the hip.
right. So that, as you said that, I was like, oh, did we all
Yeah.
consider this a team?
See, I ignored. Yeah, I didn't think of it right away.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
You're welcome. Yeah, no.
Yeah. Just as a community kind of helps to form the life that you live, team members are even more instrumental. And if either of you needed anything at 3 o'clock in the morning and I had to drive halfway across the state or fly somewhere, don't even think about it. It's done. And I recommend, and I made this promise to a gal who worked for me while she was in college. And back in the day, you remember when you could go over to the Eastern counter and you could hop on a flight down to Philadelphia and it cost $39, or probably was a little bit more back in those days because before deregulation they were more expensive. But there were 8 or 9 flights a day. So you just walk up to the counter and you say, I want to go to Philadelphia, and they say, okay, so gate number 17. So a friend of mine came out from California and she was going to be in Philadelphia, and I told her for years, you want me to meet you someplace in the United States when you're on a trip, you tell me and I'll fly there. So she did, and I did.
Mhm.
We spent 2 hours together, and then I ended up going back and doing the same thing, walking up to the counter and saying, okay, I'm going to fly back to Hartford, Connecticut, and that, we're all set. So the whole notion of how far would you put yourself out for a team member? Can I share something with you?
Please.
Just between us? I'm not sure who I'd say no to.
Mhm.
And so that's getting too. But I truthfully, if someone who I know and who contacts me and asks for help, if I can do it, it's going to pretty much be a done deal. I don't know. Does that make me a bad person?
Of course not.
And I'm not going to say that I value everyone equally, because that's not where it comes from. But it does come from, I think, a satisfaction with what the world has brought to me, and how I've been able to find myself in it, and the relationships that I have with family, friends, associates, buddies, team members everywhere. And thankfully, people are not challenging me and putting me to the test every week. Because we would find out in a hurry how far I'm willing to go, right?
Hmm.
But all of that said, that's a great question, and you got me.
I think too, because I mean, I know my circles and probably most of us are at the point where we don't ask for help that often. So we know damn well when somebody asks for help, they're in a situation that they really need it. And yeah, I mean, I'd like to think of myself as somebody that will always do something like that or
Sure.
create the situation where it can happen, or where you can be with somebody that or you think might need some help.
Yeah, and you know what, like, what it looks like most of the time? Like, there's little things.
Hmm.
For instance, if we're working on trying to get um, a sponsor for this golf tournament, for example,
Hmm.
and we know that the guy showed up at a meeting, had the check in his pocket, and left the meeting without giving the check to anyone, and then somebody says, "Well, we'll get it from the next meeting." I go, "Like hell, I get my card right over there now." And
Yep.
while I'm there, he hands me the he says, "So you don't even have to buy another a sign for me because I had this one from a golf tournament a year ago, and you can use this one." And then I take that and I run it over to somebody else's office who goes, "What am I supposed to do with this?" And I go, "I don't know. This is your organization, not mine. I guess it is my organization now, isn't it?" But that's it. The gameness of life is where where I find the juice. Like, how do we make a game? How do we gamify what people are complaining about? How do we gamify the little details that need to happen for people's lives to work better?
Did you just make up a word?
Gamify? I
No,
don't know.
I've heard it a lot to gamify.
Really?
Yeah, because I do some things like challenges and stuff like that, and then gamify
Yeah.
is a big word
I
to
mean,
Well, I'm
you
going to
know
suck.
exactly what it means.
Well, it's kind of interesting because the notion of taking something where it seems to be just a random life's occurrence and turning it into something that's got the potential for adventure and happiness and laughter and fun. And so why
Hmm.
not?
Right. Gamify everything.
If you remember, and you got to be awake to remember, which means you got to be present to be awake. So be, all those things said, I got to tell you something. I'm so excited. This time next week, we will be driving to Manhattan, spend the night, and then go on a cruise for 10 days the following.
Oh,
So, what's exciting for me is to sit here and just kind of savor this wonderful moment with the two of you. Because if I'm going to do this, I'm going to have to do it over the internet from shipboard.
uh-oh.
But in the meantime, any other thoughts on anything that we've discussed today? Because we have covered the beach. We laughed, we cried, or I did.
We did. We make quite a team, and I'm sure that our listen, everybody's listening is part of the team too. So,
Percent.
Yeah.
It's like the Brian Adams song. Everything I do it for you.
mm,
So I think, just in closing, I'm going to ask one more question. And it's rhetorical, but I hope it'll make you think, during the course of this week. When you walk along through your life and you notice that things are not working, when you notice that there's some tension, you notice there's some conflict, maybe just the rub of the green is going against you. What if you ask the question, how can I use this as energy to be a better team member? I wonder what the outcome would be of just taking that moment of, because we're typically suffering in those circumstances, right? when things aren't necessarily going our way.
Mhm.
So just one question. How can I use this to become a better team member? Lisa's smiling. Jan, you look like you're not sure.
No, I was just thinking about what I would ask.
Then would you please?
I would ask if I'm, whatever's going on, who on my team, who do I consider a part of my team? And who could I ask for help on my team?
To phone a friend. I like it.
Yeah. So who's on my team, and who can I ask for help on my team?
That's really cool. That kind of segues into the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, because you got 3 different ways you can go with that, right?
Mhm.
You can ask the audience, guess who's on your team? All those people that are nameless and faceless, right? I don't know. And there's another analogy that I've used since the mid 90s. Whenever I got really upset, I mean, to the point where my forehead was hot and my veins were pulsing on my neck and on my temples, and I would act like I was playing Nintendo, Super Mario Brothers, and I would hit reset in the top of my forehead. I had this little reset button that I could look up there, boom, get a new Mario, and off we go.
Mhm.
I tried it as a possibility a few times and played with it, and then all of a sudden it started to work.
Mhm.
And I usually ended up coming out with some kind of laughter. Like, Bill, you're such an ass. Anyhow, well, we are lighting the candle, and we've had yet another amazing conversation. And any final thoughts?
All
Enjoy
good.
your teams. Yeah, enjoy your teams. Whatever you're part of.
Yes. And namaste to everyone. The weirdo in me embraces the weirdo in you. I don't know that you've heard that one before.
Twice today.
Yeah, right today. All right, starting to become cliche, isn't it? Ladies, thank you so much, and I wish for you the best week ever.
Have a good week.
You too.
Same to you. All right. Bye-bye now.
You've been listening to Lighting the Candle, A World That Works, part of the Exvadio Podcast Network. You can catch us each week, as well as the rest of the network, at exvadio.com/podcasts, as well as the Apple Podcasts app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Audible, Amazon Music, and wherever you find podcasts.